On Friday, December 12th at 12:13 p.m., reports of gunfire at Rosemary Anderson High School came into dispatch. Officers from North Precinct and the Youth Services Division, some of whom were very close in the area, were immediately dispatched. Following up information advised that there were several students struck by gunfire and injured. This initial information led responding officers to believe that there was an active shooter situation inside of the high school. North Precinct officers arrived within minutes of the initial call, along with Sergeant Jason Pierce of North Precinct, who immediately formed a team and entered the high school and began checking the school for active threats. Officers came across several victims of the shooting inside and outside the school. Additional officers from the Youth Services Division and North Precinct arrived and formed a second team to enter the high school. When this was occurring, officers were also dispatched to Jefferson High School and PCC building, which both initiated lockdowns of their campuses. Officers located several victims: Bray Franklin, 17 years old, Taylor Zimmer, 16 years old, and David Laddie Jackson, 20 years old, who have been shot and were suffering severe wounds. The officers applied immediate first aid to the victims until they could get transferred to the responding medical units. Captain Chrissy O'Hara applied pressure to the gunshot wound of LeBray, while Officer Romero cut off his shirt looking for additional gunshot wounds. Sergeant Sessions located and comforted Taylor, keeping her alert and conscious while applying first aid to her life-threatening wounds. A fourth victim was also later located and found to have been grazed by a bullet and was treated on scene. Once the teams made sure there was no active threat inside the school, information came out that the shooting in fact occurred outside on the sidewalk in front of the school. The on-scene officers immediately identified the crime scene and secured it for evidence preservation. While this was occurring, officers were gathering what information they could on the suspect's description and provided that info to responding officers and to the gang enforcement team, who was en route from a location in East County. Officers inside the school were tasked with gathering info from students and having them all gather together in a room to maintain their safety, while officers dealt with the scene outside. Once safety was ensured, Youth Services Division officers recognized that this event occurred during lunchtime, and none of the students yet been able to eat. They ordered food and drink for the students and had it delivered, hopefully bring a little comfort to them while dealing with this stressful event, and secured inside the school. The gang enforcement team arrived on scene, determined that the incident was a gang-related shooting, and assumed the investigation as a gang violence incident. Within, I say first 10 minutes, but I believe it was even quicker, of the shooting, information was being developed by the officers on scene and the gang enforcement detectives that who the three suspects were that were outside. And within 45 minutes, gang enforcement team units had established surveillance on locations associated with the suspects. Surveillance was assisted by, and I know people saw it on the media, Portland FBI and Portland ATF showed up. We had them assist some of our surveillance units because we were short on people. We had a lot of things going on. Surveillance was assisted by those two. Officers began setting up plans for unification points for the parents who were showing up at the school within minutes of the event occurring. As you can imagine, social media, people were there very quickly. Youth Services officers, gang enforcement detectives, North Precinct officers worked quickly to debrief the students to determine if they had witnessed any events or not. And once determination was made, students began reuniting with parents near the west end of Jefferson High School. Gang enforcement detectives were able to obtain evidence from multiple sources that helped with identifying the suspects in the shooting, as well as help focus on an area where the suspects went to immediately following the shooting. Gang enforcement officers responded to the hospital to assist the victims and help coordinate the events at the hospital. As you can imagine, there was many people in the hospital, and concerned and scared for the victims. And I know Captain Henry will talk a little bit about it, but many of our community partners were there and helped with that at the hospital. Get detectives immediately began writing search warrants for the three suspects and a residence on Northeast Killingsworth Street. The three suspects that gang enforcement team identified were Lonzo Murphy, 22 years old, Marquise Murphy, 16 years old, and Markel Dugas, 18 years old. During this time, surveillance was kept in the residence. Eventually, the surveillance team was able to identify Lonzo leaving in the vehicle. Gang enforcement team officers conducted traffic stop in the vehicles that left and arrested Lonzo Murphy and recovered a handgun. Get officers booked Lonzo Murphy on a probation violation early Saturday morning. So, and that's the timeline. As this occurred at noon, we had continued all the way through the night until approximately 2 in the morning when we stopped Lonzo, and this continued. The SIRT team was then requested to serve a search warrant on the residence, and the GET team was conducting surveillance on. The SIRT team responded at service roughly after 2 a.m. On the location. They did a tremendous job ensuring the safety of everyone involved there. It's a large apartment complex. There's a lot of people sleeping that lived there and securing the location, and then turn it over to detectives for our investigation. The 2 outstanding suspects were not located inside the residence. The next morning, and that was just continuing on, there was no sleep or leaving for the officers. Get detectives were able to work with Multnomah County Department of Community Corrections to locate and detain Markel, and Get detectives booked Markel on a probation violation as well. The gang enforcement team began an exhaustive search for Marquise Murphy over the weekend and into the beginning of the week. Eventually, detectives were able to determine that Marquise Murphy, who was 16 years old, was traveling south in an effort to leave the state. The gang enforcement team located Marquise while he was a passenger in a vehicle that had just crashed after a pursuit with the Oregon State Police in Salem. Marquise was arrested and transported to Portland on Tuesday night. And so that's the length of the event. All 3 suspects getting in custody was Friday at noon until Tuesday night when this was finally finished. And the gang enforcement team, of course, is still following up. We still have a lot of work to do on the case. And I want to echo, and I hope that gives everyone kind of a narrative and summary. I want to echo what the captain says on, this was a brief summary, but I want to take a moment to publicly thank the members of the gang enforcement team, their dedication to immediate action on the case, and everyone to recognize the importance of this event and the fast action and finding the suspects quickly. And I know it's important, it's before the holidays, there's a lot of personal events going on, everybody, not just police officers obviously, but everybody, but I want to recognize that and I calculated up, they put in, my gang enforcement team put in over 1,000 hours of work between Friday at noon and Tuesday night, and it's not that big of a team, so there was, some of our folks only had 20 hours off in a 5-day period, so that dedication is just it's impressive.
And